Stirring from her deep-set slumber, Illarna felt a little soothed by the sound of trees rustling in the distance and the songs of birds chirping in lament at the return of winter. Yet, as her full array of senses finally awoke, a sudden but pressing wave of nausea threatened to make worse an already difficult rise. Remaining as still as possible, she found her vision drifting to the top of the tent as she recalled what had happened. Slow at first, her memories began to return until finally the fire flashed before her eyes. Shaken by the realization, Illarna shot up from where she laid as the memories of the searing flames flashed behind her eyes. Overwhelmed, she tried to set out the pattern of events, but her stomach again turned for the worst. Nursing her ills, she fell back down, hoping the position would relieve her nauseating disposition. Stomach soon settling to a bearable state, Illarna found her mind wandering again until Sylvain pulled back the sheet covering the entrance.
"Oh, by the Tal'en, you're awake."
Fighting the instinct to recoil from the sudden light, Illarna squinted and tilted her head forward, waiting for her eyes to adjust. Soon she noticed the troubled look on Sylvain's face, and although conscious of her stomach, Illarna again attempted to sit as the first words began to fall from her mouth. "You look as though you had been sent to see Nana Marjorie after stealing some of her apple pies." Receiving only a slight smile in reply, and feeling far too tired to be dancing around the issue, Illarna instead looked to the still open doorway. "Where are we?" Remaining silent, Sylvain moved beside her and sat uncharacteristically caged.
"How are you feeling?"
Frustrated by Sylvain's choice to ignore her question, Illarna found herself looking back to the ceiling. "My body aches, my head's pounding, and now having mentioned apple pies, I'm starving even though my stomach would have no part in it." Letting out a sigh, she turned back to Sylvain. "Seriously, how long have I been asleep?" Sylvain tensed a little, not knowing how Illarna would react to her answer, so she instead reached for a cup of water.
"Here, you should drink."
A soft smile concealing her true feelings, Illarna took the drink from Sylvain's hand and began to speak in a powerful yet calming tone. "Syl, how long?" Shifting uncomfortably, Sylvain struggled to find her voice, yet she knew well that she must, if only to prevent Illarna from straining her throat any further.
"You have been unconscious for 13 days.
Sylvain conceded, keeping a close eye on Illarna's reaction. Yet to her surprise, the only response she could perceive was the complete absence of one. Unnerved, Sylvain found herself at a loss as to how to proceed, so remained quiet. For a long, uncomfortable time, the silence lingered, leaving only the bird's call to fill the void between them. Yet with every second that passed, it felt even more pressing for Sylvain. For as long as she had known Illarna, she had never struggled to find the words to articulate her desires nor worries. Yet the woman lying before her remained silent as a tomb, either incapable or unwilling to speak. No longer capable to hold her own tongue any longer, Sylvain started waving her hand in front of Illarna's face in hopes that it would break her from the apparent paralytic state she had seemed to have fallen into.
"La, please talk to me. What is going on?"
Testing her voice, Illarna turned to face Sylvain. 2 weeks, huh? Illarna said, grating through the words. "Well, that's unfortunate. It's a lot of time lost. Though it does explain the look on your face. So where are we?"
"We are maybe 3 days from Almarras."
Eyebrows raised, Illarna questioned further. "You took the northern passages?"
"Yes, but it was no easy choice. I received word that the bridge at Halva Lasso had fallen into the river."
"Do you trust the messenger's words?"
"Well, no. They suggested we use the crossing at Verblanc, a suggestion that seemed, at least at surface level, to be the fastest option. Yet if you remember our training at the military academy, that particular crossing served us remarkably well in our war games against the Orders of the White Lions and the Silver Falcons."
She concluded, a little incensed by her lack of trust. Illarna remained silent for a moment as she pondered, calculating distances in her mind. "You have done excellently. You have made great time in my absence, and your tactical appraisal seems precise and effective. Thank you."
"There is no need, La. We all knew what had to be done. Besides, I know whose head would be on the chopping block if we were not exactly where you would have envisioned us to be."
Sylvain jibed as a smile shifted across her face. Replying with her own smile, Illarna found herself beginning to relax again. "Well, I am still thankful that it was you standing in my stead." Illarna gestured as her stomach started to grumble. The petite smile suddenly stretched all the way across Sylvain's face as she got up from her seated position and hugged Illarna.
"I'll go get you some food, and then we can continue to talk if you must so insist."
Reaching the front of the tent, Sylvain turned, her smile visibly lingering on her face.
"Welcome back, Your Highness."
Eyes glazing at all the food arrayed before her, Illarna began to stuff her face with such vigour that you would think she had not eaten for a month. Barely coherent, Illarna saved little thought for etiquette as she looked to Sylvain sitting across from her with a smile on her face.
"Good grief, La. I'm not quite sure how you're doing it, but by the light you are."
Grabbing another piece of chicken from her plate, Illarna thrusted it out at Sylvain. "What exactly are you trying to say, Syl? That I eat like an animal?"
"No, not at all, but I figured that maybe it's something your father would have said if he were here. Besides, perhaps it would be wise to slow down just a little. It has been quite some time since your last meal. And more pertinently, I'm not cleaning up no vomit, so when it inevitably comes back up, you better get your ass outside quick smart."
Finishing the last of the food on her plate, Illarna wiped her mouth with her sleeve, in a display quite unbefitting for that of a royal lady. "I have always found it strange that father would so often badger me about my table etiquette, particularly considering where I was destined to be sent. I still remember all the times he would lecture me about eating in the proper manner, but if you ask me, he looked far more ridiculous than I. Mother alone stood against him in any meaningful way."
"Illandros, let her enjoy the meal. No matter how much you wish otherwise, she is still just a child. Leave the proper etiquette until she is older. There is no need to cause such a ruckus."
The grumpy old man always hated being corrected in front of others. He sometimes went as far as abusing and beating her with little care for who was present. I don't know why, but Mother never said a word, and despite his actions, she kept her head held high and went about her life as if nothing was amiss. Choking on her words, Illarna tried to compose herself from the tears that began to swell. "My father always said that Mother died from sickness, but I don't think I have ever really believed him, and I am all but certain there is more to it than he would like me to believe." Memories stirring, Illarna quickly wiped a lone tear from her eye. "I do remember her being sick a lot, but I can't shake the reality that it was far easier for father the moment she was gone, and that begs the question, maybe he had something to do with her disappearance, and I assure you when I find out there will be hell to pay." Sylvain's heart began to hurt as Illarna spoke of her mother. The loss of a parent was never an easy wound to bear, no matter the age. However, this was a subject that Sylvain and the maidens knew all too well, for this was precisely how the Maidens of the Phoenix came to be. When a daughter was born to a noble house that was already full of heirs, they were often sold to the High Lord to be trained as soldiers. Although few knew the truth, for the training itself proved far harder than anything a regular soldier could endure. If a candidate were to survive and prove themselves capable by graduating, they would immediately be raised to a position of authority as a royal knight. As with all the royal orders, the maidens were no different, and would need to prove themselves an elite warrior capable of turning the tide of battle. This, however, came at a cost, for those who survived but did not graduate were discarded and forced into slavery to be bartered upon in the fighting pits, or worse still, sold as labour for the gold mines at Midessa, but for the maidens this meant to be made into little more than entertainment for the High Lord himself. Losing herself to the memory, Sylvain began to remember her own struggles at the academy.
"My light will never burn for another,"
she chanted in her mind. Long, realising her distraction, Illarna began to click her fingers. "What's wrong, Syl? I haven't seen you space out like that since our academy days."
"It must be a day for rare occurrences then."
Sylvain answered with a wry smile growing across her face.
"No, it's nothing. I was just thinking back to when we were training at the palace under Master Veldon. Goodness, she was such an unpleasant woman, yet you were always there to protect us."
Illarna returned her own smile and cut in. "Yeah, and a few times I was beat unconscious because of it."
"Speaking of, while you were out, you kept uttering a word that bears no meaning to me."
Illarna sat, waiting with anticipation to what she might say. Well, what was it? Defiant, Sylvain sat in silence for a few more moments before answering.
"Tal'en soul."
Just as the words left her lips, Illarna's eyes widened, for hearing the name that lived only in her dreams now spoken out loud shocked her to the core. By the mere mention of the name, all the memories of that strange encounter began to unlock in her mind. "I remember."
"La, what does it mean?"
Sylvain questioned, seeing the flames of recognition in her eyes. Stunned by the realization, Illarna wondered where she should start. It's not a what, it is a who, and to be honest, it's a long story that would be best told over a tankard of mead. By the light, you are not going to believe this. Word for word, Illarna recounted the details of her dream, and Sylvain listened. However, what surprised her the most was the precise detail of her recollection, from the reality-defying scenery to the intriguing conversation with an entity far in excess of anything based in reality. Falling silent, Illarna looked to Sylvain for her input, yet she responded with but a single word, a word that belied her own lack of understanding.
Interesting.
Incensed by her manner of reply, Illarna refused to hold her tongue. It's interesting? Well, that doesn't really help me, does it? Shaking the frustration from her voice, she continued. No, I'm looking to know what you think of all this.
Well, the thing is, I don't really have the faintest of ideas what it may mean, or how it might pertain to the abilities you exhibited back at Rennum, because honestly, it's a little out of my wheelhouse. Actually, it's probably out of everyone's wheelhouse.
I guess you're right. It does sound a little crazy, Illarna conceded, a little disappointed. It's just that it seemed so very important at the time, and ever since I woke up, I have found it hard to think of anything else.
Understandable.
Sylvain sighed, looking down at the back of her hand.
If I were to take a guess, it's most likely connected. But whether you're connected to the Tal or not, well, we are out of luck, because the only ones who can tell us either way are all but exiled from the country, and that is if you could even find one outside their sanctuaries, Valacer or Talazer.
Indeed, I must admit, I have given it more thought than I would like to admit, for what if I am a Tal, and what that might mean for my future? Because if I'm being honest, I'm quite tired of being told who I must be, and what I must do.
I wouldn't worry too much about them coming here to collect you, considering your family, the Valancours, forbade their entry into the kingdom many generations ago. Besides, if I were in your shoes, I would be far more worried about controlling whatever it was that you did in Rennum.
Leaning back a little defensive, Illarna's eyes narrowed a little. Do you fear it?
Do you?
Sylvain said, holding her gaze as best she could. Illarna quickly softened a little, knowing this was far from anything any of the maidens had ever dealt with. And soon she realized that she hadn't considered how her revelation in Rennum might have, and were likely to continue affecting those closest to her. Actually, I'm terrified, but I'm just realizing so is everyone else. The Tal are quite disliked here in Valentia, and given what happened, everyone must have by now questioned if I am one of them, whether it through lies and deceit, or by some other means unknown to them.
Exactly. But I must say that most of, if not all of us, consider the oaths taken entirely impervious. But in our hearts it is you. We serve not your father, nor the country. So if you're worried that we will hand you over to inquisitors, fear not,
Sylvain said with clear conviction in her voice. Illarna tried to put on a smile to clear the air, but somehow it felt disconnected from herself. Thank you, Sylvain. I must admit it brings me great relief and happiness to hear you say that. But you are all bound by your duty, as am I. So if I find out that I'm a Tal, then so be it. I will surrender myself to whatever ruling my father sees fit to bestow. Taking a moment as the words felt more difficult than they should, Illarna turned away. Until then, we have our orders, and I intend to follow them, be what it may.
I meant what I said. We will follow you into the afterlife if that's where we must go.
That's exactly where we might end up after all this. Eyes filling with the memories of the fire, Illarna turned back to Sylvain. That thing back at Rennum, it was the most terrifying thing I have ever seen. Truly, the Erifix could have killed me without batting an eye.
Erifix? Is that what it's called?
If we are to believe my potential Tal side, then yes. It seemed to form from the very fires we fought, but within its eyes you could see a malice that seemed to be carved by the very hatred of man, and it was so overwhelmingly powerful.
Yeah, a few of us got quite a good look at it. It was unlike anything I have ever seen before. But there was something else there, La. Something more.
Interest piqued. Illarna sought further clarification. What do you mean?
It was afraid of you. The final moments as it ran away back into the fire, I saw fear. A profound fear not unlike how I imagined we seemed to it.
Interesting. In my dream, I got the impression that whoever this Tal'en soul might be must have intervened. It's the only thing that makes sense, considering I was all but spent. Sylvain fell back in her seat, tired of all the unknowns.
So many questions. I may be wrong here, but perhaps this Tal'en soul, or whatever it is, may be trying to help you deal with the reality of what is happening to you. Might I also add that being a Tal would explain how you came out of that fire completely unscathed, and not to mention that even though you have not eaten for 2 weeks, your body hasn't changed at all. Truly, in the moments after the explosion, we thought you had all died.
Mind rushing back to that moment, Sylvain held back the tears threatening to break her composure, for the thought grew unbearable as she pictured her life without her best friend. Thankfully, I am here and very much alive, although my stomach would tell you otherwise given the chance.
Thankfully indeed,
Sylvain answered, sharing a comforting smile. Conversation fading, both Illarna and Sylvain began to hear the heavy patter of footsteps rushing about outside the tent. Looking at each other, they both wondered what could be so pressing that a maiden would need to rush at such a time. Eyes drawn to the entrance, they both waited to see who would enter.
Illarna? I was not aware you had awoken. However, it does explain why we haven't seen you, Sylvain.
Avril smiled as the worry lifted from her shoulders, but she quickly returned to the point at hand.
Aaliyah instructed me to find you, Sylvain. Our prisoner has awakened. Please tell Aaliyah that I am on my way.
Sylvain answered, complimented by a simple nod of her head. Surprised by the news, Illarna's attention turned to Sylvain. We have a prisoner? So, who made you so angry to warrant such a drastic lack of hospitality?
The man goes by Ashtor Blacker. He is a captain amongst the Brotherhood.
Enraged by their very mention, Illarna flew up from her chair, reaching for her overcoat. Startled by her swift ferocity, Sylvain jumped to her own feet, arms outreached.
Now hold on a moment. You cannot just go out in your condition. By the light, La, you have been awake for barely half an hour.
Illarna held for a moment, considering her growing anger, yet her mind had already been made. No, I've been idle long enough, and I am more than capable of questioning this insufferable waste of oxygen myself.